Yeah.
Go figure.
I think
Uh,
the worst part is just like the harshness. I think that's
yeah, and I think the problem is, and we were talking about this yesterday, is that in the past when you only had 5,000 people,
mhm.
you could get hit with a penalty and more or less absorb that because you're not going to drop out of the top 40. But now with
Oh,
15,000, you're going to have a lot more people between
absolutely,
you and what you need. And now that
absolutely.
major penalty has a much greater cost than it used
Mhm,
to.
mhm. Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
CrossFit needs to maybe evaluate, like, okay, what are the quarterfinals really about here?
Mhm,
Is this
mhm.
really where the season ramps up?
Yeah,
We need to
yeah.
focus on the best, or is it still a community event? Because that
Mhm.
community event side, I think the unintended consequence of opening up to more people is the penalties now become much more harsh.
Much more severe, and you get I think that you essentially need to have a better plan for deduction, like,
Yeah.
something as simple as, like, if somebody's getting, 1 rep every 3 seconds, ding them 1 second per rep not completed, and it's a simple math equation at that point, and
Yeah, excuse me.
you reduce their score from that, and, I did the math on a handful of different people, and it's like they wouldn't have fallen out of the top 40, they would have
Yeah,
been on they would have been in the final heat,
right.
but, it is what it is, and, um, you know, like, hopefully the sport continues to grow and change
Yeah,
and adapt,
and
you know?
that'd
Yeah.
be good for everybody. I think we all want
Yes.
it to be better. There's no doubt about that.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely, man.
let's just get this Garmin thing out of the way. Like,
Cool.
I'm a huge fan. I'm really learning more how to
Yes,
use
man.
it.
Yeah.
It's really I'm in I'm only thinking like just scratching the surface of what it can do. I'm still
Oh,
trying to figure everything out.
I've been a
So,
Garmin user for about 8.5 years now
mhm.
by choice. Like, I didn't have a relationship with them until the last year or so, and so, yeah, it's welcome to the club, man. It's good.
Yeah,
Fun
it's been
fun party.
fun. So tell me about, so just let's just go like, if you have 5 features that you really like, if you can just tell
Yeah.
me what the feature is and why you like it.
Yeah. The one that I obsess over the most is sleep tracking. I love the sleep tracking. I have worn and used a lot of different wearables and devices that measure sleep tracking. But what I really like about them is they will give you a sleep quality score, and that's based off of how much REM sleep did you get, how much time awake did you spend, and what level of deep sleep did you get, as well as also looking at your sleep routine. And so, just having those metrics to be able to determine, like, hey, is my sleep routine set up nicely, is really good to help people dial in their sleep, because sleep is ultimately the best thing for recovery, mental health. It fixes an array of things. So sleep tracking is definitely at the top of my list there.
All right, sorry, I have my son running. I had to mute my mic. Okay, give me a next feature that you like.
Yeah, and then I think the next feature that I like the most that piggybacks off of sleep tracking is they just added this one, is actually the sleep coach. And the sleep coach is really cool because it looks at a handful of different lifestyle factors in your recent sleep quality, as well as your training load. And it'll give you a suggestion on how much more sleep that you need, or maybe you need less sleep. And it'll even suggest that, like, hey, you're really recovered. You don't need as much sleep as you normally do. And it'll, like, it's a very clear bar that shows on your watch, like, hey, you need 8 hours and 20 minutes of sleep. And it'll adjust upwards of like 5 to 10 minutes. It's a really cool feature, and something that just gives you a good indication of how your body is recovering.
Cool. All right, next one. That's 2.
Yep. The next feature that I love about my Garmin is their HRV. Their HRV, the way that they measure HRV is really cool because they give an average of HRV over the night as opposed to just one snapshot throughout the night. And then they also give you a 4-week average, which allows people to see a trend on how their HRV is trending to make decisions on their training, their lifestyle factors, and things that they need to do to better recover.
All right, next one.
Yep. um, and then the fourth factor of Garmin features that I like is their training readiness and training load. These are a really cool feature because you can get a snapshot of, like, hey, you probably shouldn't train, because they look at things like HRV, sleep history, workout history, stress history, and it'll give you an indication of, like, you're really run down and beat, like, your body's physiology is showing that you're a little run down. You should probably take a break, take a day off. Or you can also look at your training load and see, hey, have I done too much aerobic work, too much anaerobic work, and maybe balance that out with your training to get a better training readiness.
Perfect. All right, let's close it out with just final one here.
And then I want to think that the last feature that I think is really applicable to a lot of people if they want to look at it is the caloric burn, or calorie counting, essentially showing you how many calories you're burning through a day. If you wear your watch all day long, the watch does a really good job of reading your HRV throughout the day, determining, hey, these are some stress factors. You've moved this much, you've got this many steps in, and it'll give you a good indication of how many calories you're burning to a day in a day. You can also pair that with, on the back end in the Connect app, you can pair that with like an in-body scan that gives you your base metabolic rate, and so that it knows and has a good understanding of exactly how many calories you burn on a baseline level. And I think it's just a really practical thing for people to use.
Fantastic. That's perfect. That will end that what we need. Then we can jump in here. We got some people hanging out. So thanks so much everybody for joining us. 1 second. I gotta get my door closed, and then I will jump into this. So
Cool.
everybody just hang tight. It is amazing how much noise a 4-year-old can make. Did we lose Cole? I think we may have lost Cole. Cole, you there? He's frozen. Frozen. Yes, he did. He froze. Let's try this. Maybe this will work. Blop. Nope. Well, this is awkward. Okay. Apologize, everybody, for this. Yep. All right, he'll hop back on here. And we're back.
Still here.
All right, you're here. Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
So we'll just jump right into this here, and I will let you go about your day because I know you're busy. So.
No, that's great, man. It's always great to connect with you, man. I love connecting with you.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in a second. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Cole, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really good. I'm really happy to be here. Sean, I was just saying, I always love getting to connect with you, and we've been in this space a long time together. So
I was thinking, I still remember the first time I met you in 2014 at an open announcement up in Seattle, and you were with Rory Zamhead, and Rory was like, "Hey, yeah, I think my picks this year are going to be this guy, and then this guy right here. He's going to make the games." I was like, "Okay, nice to meet you, sir." And here we are 10 years later, and I'm kind of amazed at how fast it goes. But just looking back on the career that you've had, I mean, you've been to the games, I think by my count, 10 times, which is rare. How have you been able to maintain that level of consistency this long?
Oh man. Honestly, I really, as cliche as it could sound, it's a deep commitment to it. And because you have to be. And if we ran the gauntlet of the last 10 years of what my last 10 years have looked like, I've had some years that were easier years and some years that have been very difficult. But in all of those seasons, it's having the priority of training be the thing. This is the career I chose, and I chose this as a career path, and I committed myself to that. And so waking up every day like, hey, like this is my main focus and this is my pursuit. I think that's probably the best, one of the the best indicators of as to why I've been able to repeat year over year. And then there's other things like, just better education, understanding the body, veteran awareness, all of those things play a factor. But I think the one main thing is just the fact that I woke up every day, even this last year when my child was in the NICU, like that was the main focus. The middle of the day, I came home and I trained to the capacity that I could train, and we went back to the NICU. Like that was my focus. So.
Well, we were talking about that a little bit before we came on about Avery and the ordeal that both of your children have been through.
Yeah.
How do you, I have no idea how you, first of all, you even deal with that, but then second, are able to deal with that and then train at the same time. So how are you able to get through that to the point where, here you are again, qualifying for semifinals?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think it's very much a conviction towards like what one has set out to do, and you know, I like I told you, like I chose this as a career path, not because like honestly, not because like CrossFit is like this like ultra lucrative
Mhm.
career path. Like honestly, there's other places that probably could have made more money, you know. So it's not that. It's not the Instagram followers, but it was more like I committed in 2014, like you were just mentioning, I was going to go to the games and I wanted to build a platform. I wanted to be a positive force in a community that wanted to change and grow. And that was the CrossFit community. That's what I saw in it. You know, I saw
Mhm.
this beautiful community that was just a bunch of people that wanted to be better. Like that's a cool community to be a part of. Like I want to do that.
Mhm.
And maybe I can be a force for good in it. And so, you know, like having that conviction as you know, for what I set out to do, I think is really what allows you to focus in and hone in on the purpose and the reason behind why I'm doing and why I wake up and thrust the body a little bit every day and prioritize it again, because like there are plenty of other things that I could have probably pivoted on, especially over the last 3 years when I was having kids and they were in the NICU. That would have been a little easier to spend time on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still feel convicted and called to continue to build a platform and just be a positive force in this community.
And how is Avery now?
Avery's good, thank you. Yeah,
Good.
both boys, they're seemingly healthy and doing really well, especially all things considered. But you know, it looks like at this point that we just have a normal baby on our hands that just had an early start and needed to go through a little bit of a challenge in the NICU first.
You mentioned too, and I thought this was fascinating again before we came on about how
Yeah,
you come out of that on the other side and you're actually better off for having
yeah,
gone through it. And
yeah,
that is a very unique perspective of that. I don't think a lot of people who have been through maybe a similar ordeal would
yeah.
have. Why do you have that perspective?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you're asking a really deep philosophical and theological question for me. You know, I think a big part of it is you know, I think we all can understand to some degree that when you go through a life challenge, like it's going to fortify you to some capacity. I mean, it's why sports and training is such a good example of what life is in a way. It's almost like living life in fast forward because it's the same idea. Like you put the body through a certain level of stress and you're going to change and you're going to adapt. Well, you know, hopefully the idea is when if you have a healthy mindset and approach and perspective on life, when you reach life's challenges, it's going to fortify you to some capacity. I understand that it can cripple some people, but I was telling you that you know when before you go through a life challenge, you kind of hope that you respond a certain way
Hmm.
and you might have that perspective like hey like I think I'm going to be this person when I when you know when I come on the other side. um and it's one thing to think that before, but it's another thing to experience that and then actually have that occur, and that is like really encouraging, to say like hey like wow like I responded in a way that I was hoping that I would respond. I can do this, I can be better. And that was yeah that was really encouraging. And yeah, it's it's been a journey, man. It's been a
Yeah.
journey.
Well, we've seen that attitude play out, I think, in your competitive career, having this reputation as being the comeback kid, and some of these final day performances that you've had in regionals to get yourself
Yeah.
to the games. Why do you think you thrive in those situations?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think I mean, first and foremost, again, you're talking about some pretty deep philosophical and theological things in my life as far as like where my faith stems from and my belief about the world. You know, and it's actually this is part of the reason why I got into CrossFit in the first place. There was a video back in 2012 that was maybe 2011 that was circulating. It was Dan Bailey and Rich Froning talking about their influence in the community and talking
Mhm.
about their faith in the community. And I don't know if you guys remember, but back in like 2012, there were some videos circulating of Rich Froning. He used to write a verse in Matthew's on the toes of his shoes.
Mhm.
And what that verse was essentially saying is something along the lines of like Christ went through this struggle and hardship for the sake of other people. And for Rich, that was very much a pull of like, so you can go through this challenge here, and you can deal with this sacrifice and this suffering right now. I share a very similar sentiment in life. You know, it's like it's and again, this isn't about like preaching the gospel and whatnot, but it's more so just like a life perspective of like, I can endure suffering. I know I have that internal strength.
Mhm.
I want to have that internal strength. And so I'm going to choose to face that as I choose to face it in the garage every day and in the gym every day. And hopefully that will translate to when those things arise in life
Mhm.
and that I can get on the other side of it and I can endure that and then be better for other people on the outside, on the backside of it. And so having that perspective when you come into competition, knowing that, hey, things aren't going to always go your way, but you need to be steadfast anyways. You just need to be steadfast and continue to do the things that you set out to do, stay positive, stay focused. Like everybody has hardship at some point in time. I mean, if you look at a CrossFit Games weekend, the number of people that deal with a hardship to some capacity where like things just don't go their way,
Mhm.
it's almost every single person in the field, if not every single person in the field. Like no perfect weekend exists, even for Matt Fraser when he was just dominant. Like
Mhm.
I, I got first, like I was right there with him. I was like, I know his weekend wasn't perfect, but he stayed focused. He just kept doing the thing that he set out to do and it pays. It's a beautiful dividend that it pays, man.
There are very few people walking around who can say they've been to the games 10 times. Now you're possibly going for your 11th trip. What more what more do you have to prove right now? Oh, did we lose you again? Oh. Well, we'll wait. We'll wait for this to sort itself out. Technology is a wonderful thing. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for showing up. Appreciate it. Probably have to re-sign on. Make a note. Get this sorted. All right, cool. We'll sign back on. If anybody has any questions you want to pop in the chat, feel free. I might try to get to it. Hanging out, waiting for Cole. Waiting for Cole. Hopefully he'll be back on here momentarily. Oh, I'm frozen. Okay, let's see. All right. All right. Here he is.
Am I
Boom.
back in?
Yeah, no idea what happened there. We're
I
back.
don't either.
All good.
That's
We'll fix
yeah,
it in post. That's what they always say.
yeah, yeah. No kidding.
All right.
All right, I'm good.
Let me just make one note here, and I will ask you the question I was asking you before things happen. All right, here we go. Uh, there are not many people walking around right now who can say that they have been to the games 10 times. You're
Yep.
one of them. Now you're going for your 11th. But what more do you have to prove right now?
There isn't anything I have to prove. There never has been.
Mhm.
Like it's, I think that's one of the things that's kind of gotten, um, I think maybe a little lost in what the ethos, yeah, yeah, let's just go with ethos. The overall ethos of the
Mhm.
CrossFit Games and the CrossFit Games community, that was different from when I first started to what it is now. Um, it was so much about early on, it seemed like it was almost like an exploration for people
Mhm.
to find how fit can I be? Can I do this thing? Yeah, we all wanted to be the fittest on earth. And we were competing for that. And there was a high level of competition. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw Josh Bridges in 2014, but
Yeah.
like, talk about competitive mindset, you know, like, um, but the one thing that was so cool was like in the back in 2014, when you went back into the athlete village, like they were sitting on couches, lounging around, making jokes with each other. There wasn't this like, um, um, was it like bravado or whatever that term is,
Yeah.
of like
Bravado.
trying to like prove
Mhm.
something. It was like, I'm exploring the best that I can possibly put forward in myself, hoping that that is enough to win. And I think I think there's a sentiment that has gotten kind of spread in the nature of athletes lately, where it's like, hey, I'm here to get. I need sponsors. I want followers. I want a limelight, or I have something to prove. It's like, oh, well, you don't have nothing. You don't have nothing to prove. It's like your value and your worth has been predetermined prior to the competition floor. Like, what do you have to prove? You know, you winning doesn't make you any more valuable of a person, any better of a person. Like, that's for you to determine your character and what you grow in and you develop. Like, so for me, yeah, not about anything to prove, but there is still things that I wanted to explore in myself. I still wanted to, um, in a sense, have a relevance in the community. Continue to be able to speak to the community, talk with the community, influence the community, and hopefully, again, spread some positivity, spread some light. You know, help people learn how to be kind and work hard.
Well, let's talk about helping people because you have made the transition now
Yeah,
into being a coach.
yeah,
And why was that the right time? Because I think this happened last year. Why was
yeah.
it at the right time for you to say, "Yeah, I'm ready to take on this responsibility at CompTrain"?
Yeah, it wasn't the right time.
Okay.
Like,
All right.
I wasn't done competing,
Yeah.
and I knew that about myself, but for Ben, it was the right time to ask me.
Mhm.
And, Ben was done coaching. He was done being a coach of CrossFit Games athletes. He wanted to focus on growing the business and being with his family and, all the other things that he had his hands on. Being a coach for athletes is a huge commitment and takes a lot of time and energy. And so he was done doing that, and he was like, "There's no one else that I would rather have step into that role than you. And so I'm gonna offer it to you. I'm gonna ask that you step into this." And then I think the cool thing about it is he had the awareness and the grace about it to say, "Hey, this can look like however you want it to over the next couple years, because I know you're not competing, and I don't want you to be done competing." He
Mhm.
actually really liked the idea of having like a player's coach, somebody who
Yeah.
is still doing the thing and coaching and helping people. And so when we talked through everything, because that was kind of my first response, like, well, man, I'm not done competing, so what do we do about that?
Mhm.
That was his response, and we talked through that, and I think it made a lot of sense. That hey, we can pivot, we can put a little bit of focus into the business and the structure of CompTrain, and see if we can help some of the individuals that we think are maybe a little overlooked, quarterfinals athletes, even people who just want to like perform well in the open, to
Mhm.
semifinals athletes. And so like, let's help try to improve that community and put some focus there. And that gave me a little space to continue to compete as well.
You spent a lot of time around him, not only as a coach, but just also as a person. What are
Mhm.
the biggest lessons that you have learned from him when it comes to being a good coach?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that it is a role that you have to honor.
Mhm.
You have to honor and respect. And coming from a background of traditional sports and athletics, played college football at the University of Washington, I will just say that I have experienced the opposite of quality good coaches. um,
Yeah.
I have experienced some really you know just poor methods of coaching, and to see that contrasted with Ben in the way that he pursues and always pursued coaching of like, hey, like I honor this role and this is something that I take very seriously. and I carry the burden of your career on my shoulders as well. It's not just on you, it's on him. Like that kind of mentality was something that I really respected a lot. And so when I stepped into the role, like I realized that, hey, if I want to do this fully, it's part of the reason why I didn't really go out and pursue taking on individual games athletes
Mhm.
and like do a big recruiting thing and try to make a bunch of noise in the space. So I knew that I one, I still wanted to compete. Two, me and my wife wanted to have kids, and well, we kind of had a feeling that that could possibly not go great. And
Mhm.
so when you consider all of those things, I didn't feel like I had the full ability to commit to the respect and honor it you should have in taking on the role of a coach.
Whenever you start a new position like that, it's one thing to see the sport and the methodology from an athlete's perspective. But
Mhm.
as you move into the role of coach, what are some of the things now that you've learned that maybe you didn't understand fully before stepping into that role?
Give me an example. What do you mean by that?
Well,
Because
I
there's
think that
like
you just you when you become, you start a new job or something, you learn a new skill or you learn a new perspective on something that maybe you didn't have. And so
Mhm.
I'm just interested in are there things that someone like you who's been around for so long in this ecosystem,
Sure.
now that you're a coach, are there things like, oh, man, that's a new lesson I learned about.
Yeah, well, I think on one front, I think there was something that was really cool for me in this last year was um I l- I've actually learned how to better make practical changes to my own form and technique
Okay.
because I had more of a lens of like, hey, if I needed to deliver this to an athlete, how would I deliver this to an
Mm,
athlete? And so having that internal dialogue, like I was essentially like experimenting, like, okay, if I was to tell somebody this, like, would this make a change?
mm.
And so like that's one thing is just sharpening the ability to communicate technique cues and changes that I would like to see. Like that's I think a very practical thing. And it's actually I spent a time in my career where I did a bout on YouTube where I committed to doing 60 YouTube videos, one a week for 60 weeks. I committed to that and part of the impetus of doing that was because I wanted to get better at speaking on camera. And so it's like one of those scenarios where like it's a practical takeaway that if people want to get better at any one thing, go commit to doing that thing
Mhm.
or something that looks similar to sharpen that skill. And so that's been a really cool aspect of stepping into that.
As you look back on the time that you've spent as an athlete, 2014 up to now, 10 trips to the games, what are you most proud of about your career?
Um, the number of individuals that have thanked me after a competition for acknowledging and noticing them as I've gone through the competition weekend, like
Mhm.
volunteers and judges, and having like real conversations with them. It is very easy to get wrapped up in yourself on a competition weekend, especially in something like the CrossFit Games where everybody's focus is on you. And I just want to be the kind of guy that no matter what scenario I'm in and what kind of platform I'm on, I see other people in the scenario. I see other people in the room, and it's not. I want to be the guy that walks into a room and says like, "Hey, there you are," not "Hey, here I am."
Mm.
Like that's kind of kind of guy I want to be in life. And so, um, to have had that sort of feedback from people that I'm at least doing that to some degree,
Mm.
that's something that I feel like I can go to sleep proud of.
Yeah, well, Cole, thank you so much for taking the time. Really looking forward to watching you compete again.
Yeah, yeah.
Semifinals. I mean, did you honestly think that you would be going for 11 back in 2014 when you said you just wanted one?
I actually I gave somebody a date, and it the date essentially landed somewhere in this timeline, 10
Mm.
to 11, and so I had
Oh,
that in my head. And the actually the indicator, this is kind of a cool indicator. The thing that kind of like tipped me off is like I looked at some of my favorite running backs in the NFL
okay.
over the last 20 years or so or 30 years and said like how old were they at at their oldest when
Mhm.
they retired? I think that could be about the timeline when you could be, hey, and it's matching up pretty well. So
Yeah.
I'm not, I feel good. I got a lot of juice in the legs. I love competing. I have this. I mean, there's a reason why I played football, right? Like I loved hitting people.
Mhm.
Like it's a weird side of me that I don't.
I
So it's
know.
like It's like
You
as nice as people think I am, it's like sometimes I just want to hit somebody.
step across the line and the helmet goes on. There's a switch. I
Totally.
know. Yep.
Yeah,
Understood.
so I love competing. I love getting on the floor and seeing what I can give. I love being an inspiration for people. I love getting to hear people's stories and the inspiration that it feeds me. I hope that we can just continue to make this world a better place together. And right now we're doing that on the competition floor.
Yeah, well, you're definitely one of the good ones, Cole. And thank you so much for
Thanks,
being
brother.
in the ecosystem. Thanks for being in the space. And honestly, best of luck at semifinals. Hope we get to see you in Fort Worth for trip number
Thanks,
11.
thanks, brother.
For
I
CrossFit
appreciate
Games.
your
All
time.
the best to the family. Great to hear that everyone's doing well.
Thank you. Yeah, and as always, I told you, I love getting to connect with you, man.